Good morning, everyone. Today's driving question is, how does the body work? Just a reminder about the expectations that you should have a pen or a pencil to write with for this lesson. You should also have either a sheet of paper or your biology exercise book. And it's very important that you do not have your cell phones or your iPads or anything that's going to cause any type of distraction. This is a remembered task. The instruction is to use the keywords provided to complete the sentences. I'm going to ask you to write the answers only in your exercise book or on a sheet of paper. You can now pause the video. Right. Enzymes are biological catalysts that speed up chemical reactions. Enzymes are made of proteins. Enzymes break down large molecules into smaller molecules. The enzymes act as the lock and the substrate acts as the key. This is known as the lock and key theory. The enzyme's shape is specific to the shape of the substrate. The reactant substrate binds to the active site on the enzyme to produce a product. You can now mark and give yourself a score. This is a retrieval practice. The instruction is to write T for true and F for false for each of the following statements. You do not need to rewrite the statements, only the answers. I'm going to ask you to write 1 to 10 in your exercise book or sheet of paper to complete this task. You can now pause the video. Right. Make sure you check all your answers, mark it, and give yourself a score. Moving on to today's lesson. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to list the 7 nutrients, state the function of each nutrient, provide examples of foods for each nutrient group. The 3 main objectives of this lesson. What did you eat for lunch? Was it healthy? Or was it unhealthy? Why does the type of food even matter? Why do we need food? We need food as a fuel to provide us with energy. Fuel is a material that can react to produce some form of heat in a chemical reaction. We need food for growth. For example, growing up from infant all the way to adult. We also need food to keep our bodies healthy and to help us to fight against diseases. So, what is in food? There are 7 different nutrients in food. We can get, using my pointer, as you can see here, you can get proteins from foods, fats, water, vitamin and minerals, fiber, and carbohydrates. We'll be exploring each of the nutrient group and their functions. So let's start with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are your simple sugars, for example, your glucose or your fructose. And you can also have complex sugars, your polysaccharides, which is long chains of sugars combined together. Foods that are rich in carbohydrates are your potatoes, your grains, your rice, for example, your pasta, bread, and so forth. The function of carbohydrates is used by the body for respiration. Challenge 1. Do you know the respiration equation? Pause the video and answer this question. Right. As a recap, it is glucose that we obtain from our food, oxygen from the process of photosynthesis to produce energy that's going to be used for cell activity, carbon dioxide as a waste product, and water. Problem is, what happens if we consume too much carbohydrates? Then our body stores this as fat. It stores the excess energy from carbohydrates as fat. This can lead to obesity, which can result in many other health problems. For example, diabetes or even hypertension, which is also known as high blood pressure. Next food nutrient, lipids. Lipids are known as your fats and your oils. You can get lipids from animals, for example, in your meats, your chicken and beef. You can also get fats and oils from plant-based. What you need to know is fats and oils from animals are saturated, which are not good. But fats and oils, for example, from plants are unsaturated, which is better for the body. The function of fats and oils is to provide some type of insulation, store of energy. It's also necessary for the making of cell membranes and for the protection of our organs. If we didn't have fat around organs, this would make the organs high risk of becoming damaged. So fats provide some type of protection, and it also provides some type of insulation to keep us warm. Challenge 2. Name the enzyme that breaks down lipids. And where is this enzyme produced? I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try to answer this challenge task. Right. The enzyme that breaks down lipids is lipase, and lipase is produced in the small intestine and pancreas. What happens if we consume foods that's high in fats? You can be at risk of a heart attack. What happens in a heart attack is that the fats block the coronary arteries supplying the heart muscle. And if the coronary arteries are blocked, it means that the heart muscles will be restricted from oxygen. And if the heart muscle is restricted from oxygen, it means that the heart cells will not be able to respire and undergo respiration. And this can result in the death of the heart cells, which is also known, leading to a heart attack, also known as a myocardial infarction. Proteins. We can consume proteins from plants. These are your beans, your nuts. You can also obtain proteins from your animal-based proteins, for example, your fish, your meat, your eggs. The function of protein is for growth and repair of our tissues. Challenge 3. Protease is the enzyme that breaks down proteins into what? I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try this challenge question. Perfect. Amino acids. Next food nutrient is your vitamins. You've got vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin D. Vitamin A, that's correct. Eat lots of carrots because it is going to help to maintain your retina. Your retina is a layer of tissue found at the back of the eye. It obtains light from the cornea. It also helps to analyze an inverted image by sending electrical impulses via the optic nerve to the brain to correct that image. So major role in vision. Eat more carrots. That's going to improve your eyesight because vitamin A is found in carrots, and the main role is to maintain the retina. Vitamin C you can obtain from your citrus fruits, your oranges and your tangerines. And the function of vitamin C is that it sticks together cells lining surfaces to make connective tissues. That's going to also provide some form of protection that's for organs. Vitamin D, you've got your dairy products, your milk, your cheese. The function of vitamin D is to help the bones to absorb the calcium. Also, vitamin D is made in the presence of sunlight, and it's made in the skin. So vitamins A, C, and D. Vitamin C deficiency. If you eat foods that are lacking in vitamin C, because a deficiency means lacking, a lack of something. This can lead to scurvy, which is very painful. Your gums become very inflamed, and as you can see, this person has bleedy gums. You also can suffer from a vitamin D deficiency if you have a diet that's lacking in vitamin D. And a vitamin D deficiency is known as rickets. And as you can see, the bones are very bent. So scurvy is vitamin C deficiency, and rickets is a vitamin D deficiency. Just to recap, the vitamin D helps the bones to absorb the calcium. Minerals. Calcium. Drink lots of milk for you to obtain all the calcium for your bones. It strengthens your teeth and your bones. You also have iron. You can get iron from red meat. Iron is very important because iron helps to make hemoglobin. And remember that hemoglobin is a protein. And hemoglobin is going to bind to oxygen and then be transported around the body to the cells. This is where the oxygen is going to be offloaded from the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is very important. Iron deficiency. What if you have a food that are lacking in iron? This can lead to sickle cell anemia. So as you can see, the diagram here on the left shows the normal shape of a red blood cell. As you can see, it has a biconcave shape. It also has a large surface area to absorb more hemoglobin. You can see that it's small and flexible. That's one of the adaptations as well. It allows the red blood cells to fit through capillaries and other blood vessels. You can see here, somewhat on the right-hand side, if you have a meal that's lacking in iron, it can lead to sickle cell anemia, and where the red blood cells become sickled. You can see that the shape is a sickle shape, and that affects the red blood cells' ability to transport the oxygen to different parts of the body. So for this reason, you will notice that patients that have a lot of that have this condition, sickle cell anemia, will suffer from breathlessness because insufficient amounts of oxygen is being transported around the body. Next nutrient is your water. Water maintains osmosis correctly in the cells. Osmosis is a type of transport in which water moves across the cell membranes. It's a type of diffusion that only involves water. It moves water from a dilute solution to a concentrated solution via a partially permeable membrane. As you move on to year 10, you will learn more about osmosis. Also, osmosis is a major part of the blood plasma. We know that there are different components of blood, and the majority of plasma is water. And just as a recap, that the cytoplasm is where all the chemical reaction occurs in a cell, and that's also made of 80% of water. Water is also important because it acts as a solvent for enzymes and food molecules. So these enzymes and food molecules are dissolved in solvents, okay? And it's going to be transported around the body. Fiber. We cannot digest fiber, but it gives the muscle of the gut something to push against as soluble food moves through the intestine. Good thing about fiber is that if you have too much fiber, that can lead to a runny stomach, but scientific term is known as diarrhea. But if you consume foods that are lacking in fiber, it can also lead to constipation. So having the right amounts of fiber is crucial. So that brings us to one of the main points of this lesson. So what is a balanced diet? Balanced diet has all the 7 nutrients, but in the correct amounts. As you can see here, you've got your vegetables, salad and fruit. You should have 5 to 7 servings of that a day. And as you can see here, foods that's high in sugar, you shouldn't have those foods high in sugar every day. So you move from the most amount to the least amount as you move up the triangle. Explain factors that influence how much or the type of food that's consumed. I'm going to ask you, this is a brainstorm activity. I'm going to ask you to pause the activity, to pause the video and brainstorm your ideas. Right. Pregnancy can affect how much food you eat. A pregnant woman has to consume enough food for herself and for the growth of the baby. Depression is also a mental disorder that can affect how much food you eat. For example, some people that are depressed might eat more food that can now lead to obesity. Some people that are depressed can eat less food, and that can also lead to weight loss or anorexia. Your gender has a role to play in the amount of food you eat. For example, the amount of calories required for a male daily is 2,500 calories. On the other hand, the amount of calories for a female daily works out to around 2,000. The social economic class also affects the type of food you eat. Our statistics showed that if you're on working class or you're underclass, you eat foods that are maybe less healthy or that are lacking the sufficient quality. And if you eat foods that snack that are high in sugar or that don't have sufficient quality, that can also lead to obesity. Whereas if you are in the upper class bracket, which represent the top 10% of the UK here, it means that you will be able to afford foods that are high in quality, which means that your diet is likely to be more healthy. Also, genetic disorders play an important role with the type of food that's consumed. For example, if you have diabetes that's characterized by high glucose levels in the blood, you would want to eat foods that are low in glucose levels, because as we know, if your glucose levels is too low or too high, it can lead to many other different symptoms. For example, you can if glucose levels are too low, you can pass out or even end up in a coma. So on that note, you have your first task to write out the functions of each food nutrient. Give one example of food groups in each nutrient group. So you're going to give one examples of foods found in each group. Okay? And activity 2, which is optional, you can design a meal with each of the 7 nutrients. You can also send your picture through via email to myself or Mr. Burns. I'm now going to ask you to complete the Google Form quiz. And just a reminder about the expectations that you should not have your cell phone that's going to distract you. You should try to remember the information from memory. If you can't, go back to the slides and don't forget to submit. Thank you.